And on my way back home, my cell phone rings. And guess what? It's the owner of one of the homes that I had just seen about an hour earlier. And he says to me, "Hey, the agent told me what it is you want to do. You want a partner to share ownership in a house. And I think that's a fabulous idea," he said. "Let's do it." Hey, welcome again, everybody. I'm Mark Chesney, the host of the indy-co videocast, where we talk breathlessly and yet tirelessly about independent co-ownership of private second home real estate, with emphasis, by the way, on the word private second home real estate. Because the last time we got together in our videocast, we took some time to talk about how indy-co is distinctive from a timeshare plan or from a residence club. We won't do that so much today. I just want to emphasize the word private. In a moment, I want to talk about a new report from the National Association of Realtors. This was just released just a week or so ago. It was written about by Mike Winters, a journalist for CNBC. And it was really illuminating in a variety of ways, particularly for young home buyers. But I think there's a point to be made about the impact on second home buying. Earlier this month, I've got it right here. Earlier this month, the NAR said in their headline, or in Mike Winters' headline, the average age of U.S. home buyers jumps to 56 years old, going on with the headline, "Homes are wildly unaffordable for young people," real estate experts say. We're sympathetic to that. Although this video cast does not particularly have a focus necessarily on young home buyers, we are nevertheless very much interested in the prices of homes generally. I want to say this, no individual category of homes is isolated such that it's totally unaffected by what's going on in the larger home market. It's like knocking over dominoes, actually. Think of it this way. If price hikes in starter homes happen, well, that will put upward pressure on price points for higher end homes, and vice versa. And both of those together, of course, will have upward price point pressure on luxury homes, particularly on second homes. Now, am I an economist? Well, I'm not a formally trained economist, but you don't have to be in order to study markets and make observations about what's going on in the marketplace. Regardless, coming back to this report, I'm quoting here, the median, meaning there's just as many above as there are below, the median U.S. home price is now $435,000 per the NAR, up 39% since 2020. Let me look to my engineer. 39%, I mean, it really seems like it's been a lot more than a 39% price hike. Anyway, while the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate has more than doubled to over 6% in that time. Now, in our video cast, we really are not quite so focused on mortgage rates, because with the indy-co model of second home ownership, the buyers are cash buyers. Well, think of it this way. You find the home, the second home that you want to buy, and you divide the value of the home by 8, and there's your purchase cost. And so, I mean, if you take that value and you make that a mathematical calculation, you really don't have to be a mathematician to find out that your purchase price for the home is way less than a 20% down payment if you were to buy the home outright entirely all on your own. So you can see that the mortgage interest rate is irrelevant. Now, I want to prove that to you. This report says, I'm reading again. This report says an 18% down payment, the median percentage buyers put down according to NAR. on a $435,000 home costs $78,300. Now, you know what a $435,000 price tag will buy? Well, it will buy a very attractive lake house in South Carolina or West Virginia or Missouri or perhaps any number of other places. If you're a buyer taking title through co-ownership, your purchase cost of that $435,000 lake house is a little more than $54,000. And so that's why we say that the mortgage interest rate is really irrelevant, because we're talking about a cash purchase that is now done intelligently and clearly done affordably. And yet you also have the tax benefit of an income property. If that's how you choose to use the second home, it may be just a vacation house for you. That's fine. You've got options. So we'll talk more another time about the indy-co model for cash purchases. But let's stay on this point about purchase costs. Here's more from the report. Quoting, "Home buying for the younger generation is wildly unaffordable," says Noah Damsky, a chartered financial analyst and principal at Marina Wealth Advisors. Quote, "Saving for a down payment can be challenging without an outsized income, which is evident in the data. And a median income only covers the bare necessities, which is why a higher income or existing wealth is critical to becoming a homeowner." You can see that report concludes with the comment about, quote unquote, becoming a homeowner. Let me say this about becoming a second homeowner. We don't say that second home ownership is for everyone. And yet, there is clearly a segment of our society that wants to own a second home. If you watched the video cast that we did last time, episode 1, which was a great introductory video explaining the indy-co concept, if you watched that, you noticed that we took just a little bit of time to talk about a Inman.com report referencing some independent research indicating, revealing that, quote, 55% of Americans who do not own a second home say they want one. And that report went on to say that almost half of them, maybe more than half of them, explained that the reason they don't own a second home or haven't bought one is because they cannot justify the cost considering infrequent use. But they still want one. And maybe you do too. And we show you how to do it intelligently and affordably. I'll tell you just a little bit more about myself. I told you a bit about myself last time. I have owned investment properties, income properties, going back to as far as like the early 1980s. I bought my first second home in about 2005, 2006, something like that. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom cabin, 2 living areas, situated right on the Utah-Idaho border. Some people in this audience may know exactly where that is on the map. It was a great. I've since sold it. I've sold it since then, but it was a wonderful investment, and we had a lot of fun with it because recreationally, there's just a lot going on the Utah-Idaho border and in that vicinity. I'll tell you, during the 2 or 3 years prior to making that purchase, I tried to learn everything that I could about how to make that purchase with the help of others. But just as importantly, it was important to me, how to make sure that the arrangement is workable and friendly such that long after the closing is over, everybody who is part of the partnership is having a good time and that we understand one another. I think I alluded to that somewhat in the last episode. Let me tell you something today that I think I did not take the time to talk about the last time. During those years, and I'm going way back, before I bought that cabin that I told you about. Um, I visited a lot of real estate agencies, a lot of real estate offices in numerous states. And every time I sat down with an agent, I explained to them what it is that I want to do, what it is I'm trying to learn how to do in a way that is workable, what I want to accomplish. One day I was in Page, Arizona. You ever been to Page, Arizona? I'll tell you, if you like the Southwest architecture and you like the Southwest culture, it's really a cool place. I was in Page, Arizona, and I was in the office of a real estate agent. And I told her what it is I wanted to do, and we talked for a while. She was not able to answer a lot of questions. That's okay. I mean, this is new. Even today, this is still new to a lot of people in terms of how do you actually put all of this together. She wanted to show me some properties. And of course, that's what real estate agents do. And I told her that's fine. I don't really feel like I'm ready to buy anything today because I've got numerous unanswered questions. Regardless, we saw a couple of properties, beautiful. And by the way, those were properties that were not for sale seeking to sell shares. No, those were for sale simply in the very traditional manner. And it was an enjoyable experience. We saw some homes. I thanked her, and I left home or I left town rather, to go back home to my home near Salt Lake City. And on my way back home, my cell phone rings. And guess what? It's the owner of one of the homes that I had just seen about an hour earlier. And he says to me, "Hey, the agent told me what it is you want to do. You want a partner to share ownership in a house. And I think that's a fabulous idea," he said. "Let's do it." And I said to him, "I just really don't feel like I'm ready to do that yet because I want to be very, very sure that from my own perspective, I have thought through all of the details before I do that." I asked him, "Why are you trying to sell the place? Why do you want to sell it?" And I'll be very honest with you. I don't remember exactly what his words were, but I remember clearly the tone of his words, which was, I bought this place thinking that I would get away just every now and then with my family or maybe with some clients and just have a good time. But it hasn't turned out like that. I haven't gotten away as frequently as I wanted to, but in the meantime, I've got expenses. I've got a mortgage payment, he said. My memory is he gave me a little bit of a list, like homeowners insurance and utilities, taxes, cable, so on. He may not have given me as long of a list as what I have built in my own mind with respect to owning a second home. But then I do remember he said, "Look, I've just got to sell it." Well, I never did meet the guy personally. And I never even had a conversation with him ever again after that phone call that he put into me. If he and I had met 5 years later, I could have helped him. And indeed, back in that time period, I did help some other people do exactly what I wanted to do and exactly what he apparently wanted to do after visiting with the real estate agent. I've had some success with this. Here's the thing. He mentioned the mortgage. That I do remember. If a seller has a mortgage, there needs to be a very orderly way to put all of the people who are about to become co-owners, buyers, put them all in place with the right commitments before proceeding to conclude the transaction. I'm giving a caution here. If there's a mortgage, that needs to be done before the seller would presume to give a deed. That's a very dangerous thing, and we'll talk more about that in detail on another video cast. When I say that all the co-owners need to be in place, obviously there needs to be a fairly expedited way for that to occur. I mean, think about it. Nobody wants to wait 6 months or a year for all of those buyers to come together. You surely might wait 2 or 3 months, but then again, you're going to wait 2 or 3 months just to conclude a transaction in the normal manner, in the traditional manner. And so we can help with all of that. That experience with that man in Page, Arizona, that was about the 2002 timeframe. And so when I said 5 years later, I could have helped him. Indeed, I did begin helping some people in various places in this country around the 2007 timeframe. I mentioned an orderly way to assemble those buyers and make sure that the commitments are in place. Just as important, there needs to be a well-crafted operating agreement that is signed by those co-owners, an operating agreement that sets out what their rules are for ownership, that sets out what let's just say the mutual obligations, the mutual expectations. You've got several people involved in a transaction here. Now they are co-owners. They certainly need to understand each other and be on the same page with each other. I think I would go as far as to say that well-considered operating agreement surely needs to have some enforcements in place. It does. And, there are some other details, really, like lining up homeowners insurance for multiple parties who all own the same property. We can talk about that another time. But I think that the point that I want to make in all of this is that all of these things that I'm highlighting very briefly, we've got past experience in doing all of those things. We have the expertise, we've got the know-how, we have the experience, and now we're setting about to offer that to other people. We're going to take your questions. I said last time, and I'll say each time, that we want to answer your questions. We know that people have questions. And if you go to deviate.com/videocast, you can see videocast right there on the top navigation of the website. If you go there, you have an opportunity to ask us questions. I'll say this, there are other ways on the website that you can pose questions to us, and we want to hear from you. But we also want to pass along those questions in this videocast, a few of them anyway, and discuss things that are on people's minds. Before we do that, I want to say that I've got just a little bit of frustration. I want to, I don't know if apologize is the word, but I just want to say something about what we're doing here. When we set out to ramp up this model for everyone, there were some difficulties. They say that any good thing is going to have some challenges associated with it. That's certainly true in this case. But I'll tell you, we are not new to the indy-co concept. Not at all. In fact, I think we can make the argument convincingly that we are the pioneers of independent co-ownership of private second home real estate, such that potentially any second home in this country could possibly be transformed into co-ownership. Sometimes I get asked the question, Mark, are you really just selling shares of real estate from your company's own portfolio of properties? No, not at all. That, I think, is the significance and the beauty of our message. Potentially, any second home could be transformed into co-ownership. And of course, you would have to say also that potentially any home could be transformed into co-ownership. Obviously, we tend to think in terms of recreational areas or where people gather to entertain themselves or entertain families, entertain clients, that kind of thing. So we're not new to the concept. We have experience in doing this very thing. We have helped people. Here's what we are new to. We're new in the effort to nationally scale the concept. Because although it's true that we have helped some people in isolation here and there in various places in the country, we are new to the idea of using social media and using modern communication methods to scale the thing nationally. And so we found that when we developed a website, we have to message to buyers in a way that is a little different than messaging to sellers. And we have to message to sellers in a different way that we message to somebody who is an existing second homeowner who does not necessarily consider themselves to be a seller just yet. And I suppose it becomes even a little more complicated when we layer on the reality that we are communicating and messaging to real estate agents. And so regardless of who you are, if you're a buyer that you'd like to buy a second home in this way that I'm talking about, 1/8 of the value of the home, and you need other buyers to join with you on that, we will help you find those other buyers. If you are a second home owner and you would like to sell shares, and maybe also you would like to retain your name on the title so that you can continue to enjoy this home that you love, we will help you find those buyers. So regardless of who you are, our website is speaking to each of you, all of you. And we want you to know that. Hey, let's pause right here and let's take some questions. Rita in West Virginia asks, you mentioned that there are certain transaction documents that you use. What are they? Are these different than the standard documents used in a typical real estate transaction? Well, great question, Rita. It really is. When you think of standard documents used in a transaction, you obviously think of the offer to purchase real estate. That is a contract. And when it's agreed to by the buyer and the seller, you've got an enforceable document that eventually will lead to a closing. We certainly use that. However, I spoke a moment ago about the need for a seller to assemble all of the buyers before proceeding to give a deed, particularly where there is a mortgage involved. We created, and we consider to be proprietary, you're permitted to use this document with our help, our assistance. We created a document that we call the Priority Reservation Agreement. Now, what does that do? Well, it does several important things. It is a document that assembles the buyers. It takes just a little while to get everyone into place, but in signing on to the Priority Reservation Agreement, PRA, in signing on to the PRA, buyers are making a commitment that this is what they want to do. They want to buy a property that is identified in that document. They have the ability to back out. I mean, it is to a certain extent on the time calendar. It's non-binding. People can change their minds. People do change their minds, and there is the provision to do that. But eventually, it will become hard or solid to the point that now we have the commitments in place. That is important not only to the seller. Actually, it is important to each individual buyer, because when you step forth to purchase real estate in the co-ownership model, there are other people that you are wanting to rely on. And the truth is, they are wanting to rely on you. And so the PRA does that. How is that commitment made real? There's a reservation payment. It is refundable under certain conditions, but going toward a transaction, that reservation payment establishes the buyer's intention. It does something else, and maybe I won't tell you, or maybe I won't be able to think to tell you everything that it does, but one more thing that it does that's important. It establishes an order of use. I've been asked the question numerous times in the early going of this process, Mark, how is it known who gets to use the property when? It's a great question. The PRA does that. There is an exhibit on the PRA that establishes the order of use. Now, in saying that, let me also say very quickly that a part of our marketing and part of the beauty of indy-co is that all the co-owners get use of the property during all of the seasons of the year. The PRA establishes an order of use such that it's meant and understood to be fair, meaning that the same owner should not have the property the same holidays and the same weeks each year. Well, that wouldn't be fair. And so there are mechanisms in those documents to rotate and adjust so that there is indeed a rotation, but nevertheless, all the co-owners get use of the property during all the seasons of the year, an equal amount of time. Um, that's one of the transaction documents. Another transaction document, and I've already alluded to it, is what we call a co-ownership operating agreement. That is an agreement of our creation. Various industries use operating agreements for various reasons. We have fashioned an agreement which we consider to be proprietary that is specifically applied to co-ownership of second homes. And so that use calendar is an exhibit, but among other things, it sets forth the expectations that buyers should have with one another and should be able to rely on one another for. I'll tell you this, all the co-owners know eventually, certainly everybody that we have helped in the past with a co-ownership operating agreement know that a third-party administrator is really what makes the entire venture enjoyable, meaning that co-owners don't have to worry about the administrative details of the property, the paying of bills, etc., the paying of taxes, and just the general administration that helps all the co-owners stay on the same page. A third-party administrator really helps to make the entire venture worry-free. We provide that service as well. And so those are the transaction documents that I refer to. People certainly have an opportunity to review those documents before they're expected to sign them. So we provide that for you. There is on our website, although it is not navigable, you would have to specifically request an opportunity to review a very careful summary of the OA, the operating agreement, and also the PRA. There are also a couple of half-hour tutorials on each of those documents. I don't think that those videos are navigable either. You would have to specifically request them. But we'd love for you to have them because we want you to feel as though you are well informed as we go down this road together. Those are the transaction documents, Rita. You've asked a very good question. Here's Jason in Alabama. When assisting clients, do you advise them on how to take title? As you know, there's a variety of ways of taking title. Jason, you may be an attorney, the way you pose the question. Maybe not. Let me say we do not give legal advice. However, we, Diviate, and myself, Mark Chesney, we receive legal advice. In fact, we have a couple of attorneys that are carefully working with us to do everything that we do here. Having said we don't give legal advice, let me say this. We have been involved in co-ownership transactions in the past where title was held by tenant in common. I won't take the time to explain what is tenant in common. You may feel like you know already. But what we've learned with a lot of experience is that the ideal way to hold title is by limited liability company. You may or you may not be familiar with what is an LLC. Regardless, it is a document that is duly registered at the state. The people who are becoming co-owners sign on to that LLC. I think all states, I believe that all states in this country say that if an LLC is to be organized properly, there will be an LLC agreement. And in this case, our operating agreement that I spoke of a moment ago is the LLC agreement. And among other things, the significance of that is that the operating agreement specifies exactly what percentage of ownership the individual co-owners have in the agreement. And the LLC becomes the instrument by which that is made known. Now, the LLC is the buyer of the property. And when you go to the county courthouse to record a deed, to file a deed of record, it is stated that the LLC is the owner. Why do we do that? Well, we do it for a variety of reasons. One is that we have found that a whole lot of people like to have their privacy preserved. knowing that the deed on record is in favor of the LLC establishes that privacy. The individual people's names are not on the deed. The LLC is the record owner. Privacy is one. We have found in times past that states, let me not say states, let me just say whatever the jurisdictions are that assess and collect real estate taxes. It's difficult and complicated, and some just really do not like having to send tax notices to multiple people where property is owned by multiple parties. So in place of that, the manager of the LLC receives that tax notice and pays the taxes in behalf of the co-owners. I think there are probably other ways, but we have found with some experience that ownership by LLC is clearly the preferred way. That doesn't mean that an individual owner eventually 2 years later, 3 years, 5 years later, whatever, who decides that maybe they want to sell their interest, that's easy. I'm confident that any experienced real estate attorney will tell you that it is no problem whatsoever to simply substitute a new co-owner, and that's among the other services that we help provide. We've got counsel helping us on all of this. A very good question, Jason. Let's do one more from Blake in Utah. Who sets the costs to be paid? Blake, a really good question. I interpret that question to mean the operating costs, like the utilities and the taxes and so on and so forth, including whatever nominal compensation is paid to a third-party administrator. I'm assuming that's what you mean when you say costs. I want to say very quickly, the co-owners control the costs. When a property is initially put into service, a budget, which is an exhibit to the operating agreement, a budget will have been prepared, and it will have been prepared based on our experience in crafting budgets for second homes, coupled with the specific insight we get from the real estate professional who was involved in helping us with the transaction. A budget will be prepared, and it becomes an exhibit to the operating agreement. But let me emphasize something. The provisions of the operating agreement say that the co-owners are in control of the costs. And so what has happened in our experience in times past is that, a bit of a reserve account, which is intended to be built monthly, is increased by such an amount that it becomes obvious to the co-owners that there's too much money in the reserve account. And so they, not the administrator, but those co-owners, have the ability to adjust the costs so that reserve account can be changed. My point that I want to emphasize is that the co-owners and not the administrator are in charge of controlling those costs. Now, examine what you know about timeshare plans. That's not the way it is. Or residence clubs, or destination clubs. Co-owners don't set those costs. Those costs are set for them. Assessments, monthly costs, etc. This is another beautifully distinctive aspect of independent co-ownership of private second home real estate. Blake, that is an excellent question as I interpret it. Okay, once again, we appreciate very much you joining us. Please dial us up again when the next indy-co videocast drops. We're so glad that you joined us today. Please go to our website, pose questions to us. We want to hear from you. We want to help indy-co become a reality for you. In the meantime, be healthy and be well. Take care. Thanks.